This is very important, and today we are going to deliberate on one article which was written in Times of India yesterday by the Indian Trade Service official. So you can say this is Government of India's opinion with regard to Green Box Subsidies, and here I would like to explain you what is exactly the agreement on agriculture, why it is becoming so controversial, right? Here, examine Green Box Subsidies and what is the contention of developed and developing countries on agriculture subsidies, and what is the outcome of this WTO ministerial conference at Buenos Aires. I am going to deliberate on Monday or Tuesday, and here I am going to deliberate about this Green Box Subsidies. As per the article, quite ironical situation, you see, they talk about our subsidies through minimum support price by the Government of India for our public distribution system. But you see, Indian farmer on an average gets a subsidy of $250. What is $250? $250 roughly comes to around 16,000 rupees or so. So the poor farmer gets rupees 16,000 as subsidy on an average. But whereas on an average, the farmer in America and European Union gets $60,000. Of course, the farmers are very less there. The farmers are quite big there, but they are less in number. But government gives lot many subsidies there. Each farmer gets $60,000 there as a subsidy. $60,000. What is the value of $60,000? 40 lakh rupees in our currency. And our poor farmer gets just $250. Then for each $100 value of produce, suppose if $100 of rice are produced, if $100 of rice produced in Switzerland, government gives a subsidy of $60. That means I am talking about Switzerland and Norway. So there is a subsidy of 60%. And where is the subsidy for our farmers? Our farmers are not able to come out of distress even after number of programs by the government. And in Western countries, the farmers are getting 60% subsidy, 70% subsidy. In South Korea and Japan, the total subsidy comes to 50%. US gives 60% on canola. These are the figures by assuming that the production is $100. If the production is $100, these are the subsidies given by the advanced countries. And if you look at European Union, $65 on rice, then $75 on olive oil, $110 on sugar. So these are the subsidies in one form or the other. They give money by citing research and development. They give money by citing environment. They give money by citing natural disasters. These are all green box subsidies. So they need not reduce those subsidies. But when India is giving subsidy to the farmers by procuring the food grains at minimum support price, that is counted as subsidy and that is to be reduced. So this is the irony of the world today. Then you see, these are all the various food items, and what is its resultant outcome? We have seen 60% subsidy, 70% subsidy. They may not be directly given to the farmers, but there are several ways of giving that, and all put together it comes to that. Then what happens? Developed countries. What is the resultant outcome of these subsidies by developed countries? Here, developed countries spend a lot to support agriculture. Because of that, what happens? It leads to surplus production there. When they are spending so much, then it is leading to surplus production. So the excess, that too, they are giving too many subsidies. So therefore, they can export the excess at low prices. They are having lot of surplus because government is giving lot of money, and that excess because the prices are very low because of government subsidies. So they can export them at very low prices. The cheaper imports depress the local prices, because when wheat is coming to our country at low prices, then our farmers will suffer. So the government in fact gives this minimum support price. Here it makes local farming unviable, because in our country 50% of the population are dependent on agriculture. When the cheap imports because of very high subsidies are coming from those foreign countries, how the farmers will live? Then it leads to import dependence. Then here the local farming will become unviable. Then if the local farmers are not doing farming, then it automatically leads to import dependence. It hurts a lot for countries like India, because when farmers are, in fact, when we are getting the cheaper produce from other countries, India will be affected badly, because of the reason more than 90% of our farmers are subsistence farmers. So, developed countries' subsidies are distorting the agriculture pattern in most developing countries. This is the ground reality today. And agreement on agriculture, you see, agreement on agriculture contains various agriculture policies to be adopted by the member countries. I am talking about WTO agreement on agriculture. So what this agreement says? Reduction on tariffs on imports. So when cheap wheat is coming from America, we have to reduce the tariff. We have to accept it at the detriment of this poor farmer. Then second thing is elimination of export subsidies. So exports subsidies must be eliminated, so that our products, so that the globally, or you can say globally, export competition is to be promoted. Then reduction of domestic subsidies. You see, the real catch is here. They want reduction of domestic subsidies or reduction of domestic support to agriculture. But the irony is they are giving billions of dollars in subsidies with the separate name of Green Box Subsidies, and developing countries like India are under Amber Box Subsidies. They do not want to eliminate Green Box Subsidies, but they want us to eliminate Amber Box Subsidies. Here you see domestic support. So reduction of domestic subsidies or domestic support. So what do you understand by domestic support? We are leaving these two things. Basically, agreement on agriculture talks about reducing the tariffs on imports, elimination of export subsidies. Third one is domestic support, or you can say reduction of domestic subsidies. We are talking about this contentious issue. This is the most contentious issue. And what do you understand by the domestic support? The meaning of domestic support. This is the support given by the member countries to their domestic agriculture sector. Some of the domestic support may distort the trade. That means when lot of domestic support is there, then it will automatically distort the trade, because when a high cost producing country, if there is no support, the production in Western countries will be much higher than the production costs in our country. But they are highly subsidized by the government. So here, high cost producing country with the domestic support can become exporter by giving high domestic subsidies to farmers. Hence, when domestic support to farmers are there, then they are known as trade distorting subsidies, and they are prohibited under WTO rules. So trade distorting subsidies are prohibited, and the support given by the governments are kept under different boxes. So they are kept under green box, blue box, amber box. So here you see green box subsidies. They are non-trade distorting. So this is the mechanism which is cleverly engaged by the developed countries. developed countries infer everything to this green box subsidies, which runs into billions of dollars, and they are not required to be reduced. In the eyes of the developed countries, these are not trade distorting subsidies. They will not distort the trade in the words of the developed countries. Here, they are non-trade distorting. Countries can give as much as it wants, and here cash payments by the developed countries in the name of this research, disease control, infrastructure, restructuring of agriculture. So all these things in one name or the other, developed countries are giving green box subsidies, and developed countries says they are not trade distorting subsidies because they are given for environmental protection, disease control, developing infrastructure, then restructuring of agriculture. So that's why they are not trade distorting. But the poor countries like India, they are giving this umber box subsidies, and our subsidies are classified under umber box, and they must be reduced to 10% of the total production. The domestic support must not exceed 5% for developed countries, 10% for developing countries, but these are all exceptions. Green box subsidies do not come under any trade distortion. So, umber box subsidies, these are most trade distorting and have to go away gradually. The minimum support programs of developing countries fall under the umber box. So, the irony is billions of dollars of subsidies given by the developed countries, which India and China at least came together on this issue and questioning the developed countries. What about your green box subsidies? Right. Then more on the green box subsidies. In the words of the developed countries or in the words of the WTO, green box subsidies, they do not distort the trade. They are permitted subsidies. They are the subsidies in the name of support to the farmers during crop failure, incentives to the farmers to protect environment, subsidies for R&D, subsidies for disease control. So, new names, beautiful names created by the Western countries. But we don't have those many beautiful names for poor farmers in our country because we don't have that much money also to give to the poor farmer. Then these are provided through the programs and de-linked from the current level of production and prices. So, green box subsidies are two types given in Western countries, that is for research and development, training, marketing, domestic food aid, and this is natural disasters, crop insurance. All these things are green box subsidies given primarily by the developed countries. Then green box subsidies, developed countries provide these subsidies in huge amount. I am talking about green box subsidies. Anyone can give these type of subsidies, but you see the difference between developed countries and developing countries as far as green box subsidies are concerned. Developed countries provide these subsidies in huge amount, and there is a general opinion that indirectly they are trade distorting. Developing countries feel that they are indirectly trade distorting, and they are coming up with beautiful names by using their brain. Then here they should also be brought under the category of subsidies. That means umber box subsidies or trade distorting subsidies as per the experts. And you see, developing countries are not able to provide such big subsidies due to the lack of financial resources. One reason is we don't have that much financial resources. Second one is our farmers. In fact, the developing countries are not that efficient in promoting agriculture on environmental lines, on the disease control lines, because we are having lot many poor farmers and based on and their livelihood is subsistence agriculture, and they may not understand what is environment control and all those things. Then see the rules on minimum support price, and we talked about green box subsidies. Green box subsidies are over. That means we discussed a lot about green box subsidies and what is the contention of developed countries, developing countries, and why they are trade distorting, and with beautiful names how they are in fact incorporating. All those things we discussed. Now you see umber box subsidies. They are trade distorting and they have to go away, in the words of WTO, and our subsidies in the form of this minimum support price is coming under this umber box subsidies. So they give billions of dollars to farmers. They have to stay, but our minimum support price for poor farmers has to go away or to be eliminated. You see the contrast, or you see the paradox. The minimum support price, you see, the rules on minimum support price are not at all in fact realistic. The WTO rules, umber box subsidies, green box subsidies we discussed, but you see the rules on minimum support price, and these comes under this umber box subsidies. They have to be eliminated in due course of time. And here, if the minimum support price for a produce is more than its price prevailing in 1986-88, it will amount to subsidy. Nobody knows the rationale about this, because to compare the minimum support price with 1986-88 price is unrealistic, and the annual subsidy on a produce should not exceed 10% of the production value. And the interpretations of agreement on agriculture is also flawed, that subsidy must be calculated on 100% of the produce and not on the quantity bought by the government at MSP. So this is another flaw. So this is all illogical, and the developed countries must look at green box subsidies first. And what about this peace clause? Till the permanent solution is found. Of course, we discussed about this in the previous lecture, so I am not going into detail on this. And this lecture, I intended to tell you about what is the difference between green box and umber box. And this peace clause, till the permanent solution is found, nobody should question the subsidies in developing countries. That is as per this Bali agreement. And by 2017, a permanent solution is to be found for the food subsidies in developing countries. But in this Buenos Aires meeting, no conclusion could be drawn, right? So this is all about this. And peace clause comes with several painful conditions, and hence there is a need for complete revamp of agreement on agriculture, so that the food security and livelihood concerns of at least 2 billion impoverished people are not affected. Right friends, this concludes today's editorial discussion. Have a nice weekend. Thank you.